Tamil Selvan sir, good evening. Hello sir. Tamil Selvan sir.
Yes, ma'am.
You can continue the session, sir. Thank you.
Hi guys, good evening. Let's get started for today's session. Let me share my screen. Can you all see my screen? Alrighty, thanks for confirming. Yes. Okay. So the topic for today is we are going to see how to do authentication and using some validations and certain packages like Encrypt and other things. Okay. So that is the agenda for today. Okay, let's get started. So there are two things when you go to create an API. So first thing is authentication. So authentication is nothing but you need to be an user in that particular system, or you need to have an access to that particular API. For example, so if you want to access some public APIs, so you need to have something called authentication. Okay, so only authenticated user can access the APIs. Same way, for example, you build your own application, and whenever a user logs into the system, you need to first know that that particular user exists in your system or not, whether that particular user is an authenticated person to access your APIs or access your website. Okay, so that is what authentication is. Okay, so that is the key part of your whatever the backend language that you go. So okay, so that is the first thing. And next thing is authorization. So authorization is nothing but a second level step of your authentication. So authentication is nothing but whether you are an authenticated user for that particular system or an API or an app. Okay. The next thing is you are an authenticated user now. And then what is an authorization is whether you are authorized to access certain resources. For example, not every users can access all the posts. Okay, same way they cannot delete a post. So those are things, something like you are giving access to a particular user, whether they have access to get a post, or they can create a post, or they can update a post. So giving certain features as an authorization path. Okay, so that is what authorization basically. Okay, so today we will see what is an authentication basically. Yeah. So authentication, as I mentioned you, so you need to know whether the particular user is an authenticated user to access your APIs or your app. Okay, so there are two things basically. So one is, so first thing is user will be signing up to your system, and they will be registering with certain basic details like name, email ID, or password, other things. And again, once that particular user is registered, okay, then he can access your, I mean, he will be an authenticated user to access your system when he logs into the system again. Okay, So that is what your register and login flow. That's what we are going to cover today. Okay. So first thing is, so here, so far we have seen these things. We have created a route, something like post route, and whenever the post route is called, and based on the API they access, we are giving the data. Okay, so I can go here. So for example, if I make a get API, it is going to give you the data. Okay, so this is the case. So anyone can access your APIs now. So that is the understanding here. Okay, so now we are going to add some new features like the user should be available inside our system. Only the users who are registered in our system, they can only access those access our data. Okay, so that is what we are going to cover, the basic registration and the login flow. Okay, so let's get started. So what I'll do is I'm going to create one more route, something called Auth Routes.js. Okay, so basic route. So I'll take a copy of my post route here. So I'm going to use two routes basically. So one is post. So both are post basically. So one is register and another one is login. Okay, so based on that, so whenever your user register, okay, so you'll be getting something called request body, request. I mean, in the request body, we'll be getting the name, email ID, and the password. Okay, so that is what we are going to see here in the case of register. So whenever the user logs in, so he will send like email ID and the password. So whether the user is logged in or not, we will be checking in the login flow here. Okay, so now we have created route. Okay, so I'm going to create a service now. So exactly similar to that we have for post, right? Same way I'm going to have one more thing for my so auth.services.js. Okay, so here I'm going to copy the same here. So I don't I will take certain things alone. So I'll just edit these things. So this is going to be my auth services. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is one is for register. So whenever the user register, I'm going to call this function in my routes. Okay, same way one is something called login. Okay, so we will remove these things now, or you can command this and you can command this. Okay, so we have created an API. So I will just change it to auth service now. And here it's going to be auth services, auth service.js. Okay, so I'm going to command these out. Okay, so and this. Okay, so the first thing is, so whenever they make an API call, I will add the routes here as well. Okay, so one more thing is your routes, your new route now. So auth, and I'll import the auth route as well. So it's going to be auth dot routes. Okay, I can have little bit. So auth route already. Okay, so the basic setups are done. Okay, so whenever I make an API call using /auth here, okay, so here I use post, right? Same way if I make an auth API here, like auth, okay, we'll go to the auth route, and if the auth/register, then I'm going to make the flow here. So what is the things that we need to do? Those things I will be writing here. Same if I use auth.login, okay, so I'll be doing those logics in this place. Okay, so basically what I'm going to do is here I'm going to call something like auth services dot register, because I have created a function here, right? So I'll write those logics here. Okay, same way here auth service dot login. Okay, so in the routes we will not be writing most things, right? So same way here. Okay, so we will be just returning them. We will not be writing those things. Something very similar to your post services, we are going to achieve the same here as well. Okay, so here, for example, I'm going to call my auth/register. Okay, so I'm going to send some data. So for example, name, email, and password. So whenever we register into certain websites, we will be giving these things as an input, right? So for example, name, I can have something called test and something like test at GUI.com. And we can have any password, something like 1234, something like this. Okay. So whenever you want to register, okay, so you need to call this API. So for example, here, I need to call 3000/auth/register. So automatically this route will be coming here. Okay, so this place. Okay, so I'll command this out. So what I'll be getting? I'll be getting those data I will be getting in request body basically. Okay, I'll just print it. Okay, so whenever I register, I'm just printing consoling my request body. See, so I typed in name. I just sent name. Name is like as test, email ID, and password. Okay, so we have just got our inputs now. Okay, so now what we need to do? So what is the next step? So we need to register our user, right? So basically, we need to insert this user to our database. Okay, so we will create something called a collection called a users and push our data inside the particular collection. Okay, so see, so here, the first thing is I need to push this user, okay, and register them to the database. Okay, so for example, okay, the same way here. So const user equal to auth service.register. Okay, so basically what I'm doing here, so I just printed my console request body here. Okay, so I printed my request body here, right? And once the user register, I'm going to just push that user to the database. Okay, so basically I'm going to pass my request body to my auth service.register function here. Okay, so here, okay, so now here I'm going to insert the user to the database. Okay, so what we need to do, basically we need to insert, we will be using insert one, right? So that's what we are going to do again here. Okay, so for example, here whenever we created the post, we just inserted, right? So I will just have this thing here. So instead I will be having a collection called users, and I will be getting the data here. Okay, so data. Okay, simple as that. So whenever the user registers here, so whenever the user register and get he sends something called name, email, and email and password. So once that is done, okay, so we are just pushing our like auth services dot register dot request body. Okay, and we are calling that user here. Okay, so register API. So mongodb dot collection dot users dot insert. Okay, so once this is done, okay, so what I'll do is once this is done, so I'll have it await here. We'll send result dot send. So some message. So basic message is successfully registered. So basic message here. Okay. See. So whenever we call post API, post method with register auth/register, we'll be coming to this route. I'm just printing my request body. Once it is done, I'm going to just calling my register function in my service here. And there I just sent request body, which is like name, email, and password, right? So those things I have pushed it to my auth services here and insert into the database. Okay, so users is a collection, db.collection dot users insert and that particular data, or you can use insert one, whatever the thing you want. Okay, so then once this is successful, okay, no issues, then we're just sending the message like successfully registered. Okay, so like we used it here, right? So in our post out.js, okay, something similar to that. Okay, so let's see. So first I'll go here and see there is no collection called users at all. Okay, so I'll refresh it. So there is no collection called users here. Okay, no collections. So now I'm going to insert this user. So I'm getting a message called successfully registered, and it will be inserted in our database. Okay, so if I go here and refresh, So there will be so any error. Okay, so here it is. So the user's data that we inserted, right? So here it is. So I just inserted my new data, right? So test, email ID, and that particular password. Okay. So this is how the registration flow would be. Okay. User register, we will be sending that particular data to our collection. It will be inserted here in our database. Okay. So that is this is the basic, very basic flow of a registration process. Okay. So there are multiple things in it. Okay. We will see one by one. Okay. So far clear on this? Clear on the registration part? Alrighty. So now let's go ahead with the additional things. Okay. So the first thing is, for example, we need to have something called a validation. Okay. So what is a validation here? For example, if I send any data, it's not in the proper email format. Okay. So we can mention some rules, like you can check whether this is an email or not. For example, they can send, for example, name like 1 character, 2 character, and you can mention like name should be minimum 4 characters and those things. Okay. And same applies to your password as well. Like it can be 1 character, it can be like minimum 6 characters and those things. Okay. We need to basically check the values that the API is getting. Okay. And it's something called a validation. Okay. Input validation. Okay. So basically these are all the process that we need to cover. Okay. First thing is, so I'll just tell you the flow. Okay. So first thing is, what you need to do, you need to check whether the input that we got is valid or not, whether the email ID, password, name or correct validation. Okay. And same way, if they can send null, they can miss the name. Okay. So we need to check those validation basically. Okay. The second thing is, so these are all something like a logical flow. Okay. So you can directly say this. Okay. So what would be the next step? So next, what we should do? So we have checked. So the last process is, for example, last process we will be inserting the user. So inserting user to DB. Okay. Before that, okay, what sort of the things? So what sort of things we need to do? One is we have just validated the inputs like name, email ID, password, those validation. Okay. So then what would be the next step? Any guess? Any guess? So these are all something like logical question. Exactly. So we need to check duplicate values, whether, so we basically user cannot multiple user cannot register with the same email ID, right? So here we need to check whether email ID exists or not in our database. Okay. So that is the next thing. Okay. So what is the next step? So email ID which they just now registered exist or not. Okay. If already exists, okay, we need to throw an error that already the user existed or the user is already registered. Okay. We need to send those data. Okay. So then what will be the next step? Any? Okay. So I'm not sure whether this you know this or not. Okay. So we should never store our passwords in a plain text in this format. Okay. So whatever the user enters, okay, we should not store the password in this way. Okay. So we need to encrypt the password and then store it in the database. Okay. So what is the reason behind that is, okay, so I am having access to the database now. Okay. So now if some user get registered into your system, okay, so I can take the email ID, okay, and go to my front end and log in using the password. Okay. Because I know the password here, I can just copy paste and log into the system, I can take their credit card details or whatever that particular app is having. Okay, so even a developer or even a database admin, okay, even if the database is getting hacked, okay, so they should not know the password that is being present here. Okay, you should never store your password in the plain text format which the user gave as an input. Okay, you should always encrypt them and store in it. Okay, whenever you retry them, we should decrypt it. Okay, so that's how it will work. Okay, so the next thing is we should not directly insert the user to DB. Okay, so basically user details to DB. Before that, we need to encrypt the password. Okay, so these are all the major things that we need to understand when the understand behind the registration flow. Okay, first you need to validate the inputs. Next thing is whether that particular user already exists or not, and then you need to encrypt your password, and then only you will be inserting them to the database. Okay, so for each and everything, okay, we are going to make use of certain things. Okay, for example, first for the input validation, we will be using a package or a library called Joy. Okay, and email exists or not, we will be just querying our database. Okay, so Mongo query to check the data, to check the user. Okay, so for the input validation, we'll be making use of a package called Joy. And for email exists or not, we'll be making a Mongo query to check the user in our database. And encrypting the password, we are going to use a package called Bcrypt. Okay, so these are all some libraries. So we basically use whenever we develop a Node.js application. Okay, so these are all popular packages. And inserting the user database, again, it's going to be a Mongo query. Okay, to insert. Okay, so basically insert. Okay, so we have done this part alone. Okay, so user registers, and you will be just inserting the database, inserting into the database. Okay, so this part is done. Okay, so now let's go step by step. Okay, so first thing is we need to understand, okay, about the input that is going to come from the user. Okay, so here, so for example, whenever the user register, there should be something called name, there should be something called email, there should be something called password. And you can have some other validations like name should be 6 characters or 4 characters minimum. And the email should be of minimum 6 characters. And you can have some validations like email should be email format, email ID should be in the form of an email ID. Same way for password, you can have like minimum 6 characters max and other things. Okay, so that is the structure of your register API, the input that it takes. Okay, so here we are going to make use of a package called Joy. Okay, so using this Joy, okay, so I'm not going to do these things here. So in my register flow here, okay, so I have one function, right? We'll have these things addressed there. Okay, so I go here and address those things in my registration flow here. Okay, so first thing is we covered the 4th topic. Okay, so the 4th topic is done. So the first topic is, I told you, we are going to make use of a Joy library. Okay, so if you go here, so this is the library. Okay, so basically you can see here, so you see the weekly downloads. So this is popular one now to validate the data. Okay, the most powerful schema description language and data validator for JavaScript. Okay, so we will use this in anywhere. Okay, you can use it in Node. To install the particular package, so npm install Joy. Okay, so your Joy thing is done. Sorry. Okay, so now before moving on to the validation part, okay, so each and every function will have certain data formats. Okay, for example, registration will take some data type. Okay, for example, for registration, what you need name, email ID, and password. And for our login, so whenever you get logged in, you don't need to send your name, right? You need not type your name, right? So whenever you get logged in, you just need your email ID and the password. Okay, so each and every function will have a different input. Okay, So that is the basic understanding. So we are going to define a schema or a structure for each and every environment. Okay, for example, for register, so I'll have something called here, or I can have, okay, register schema. Okay, first you need to require that library. So const joy package. Okay, so we basically use it in JOI. Okay, so you need to mention a schema. So schema is nothing but a structure. Okay, so you need to mention a structure for this data which is coming to your register flow. Same way for your login. Okay, so first is register schema. So what it should be. Okay, so basically it is going to be an object. So because you are going to send an object, right? Okay, so it's going to be joy dot object. Okay, and here this object, okay, inside that particular object we can mention what are all the properties that are going to come. Okay, for example, name, email ID, and password. Okay, so name should be string, and it can be so it can be minimum 4 characters. Okay, so this is how joy package works. Okay, first it should be a string, and you can mention it can be any order. Okay, so string minimum 4 characters, and you can have some max characters as well, maximum this length, and you can mention whether this is required or not. Okay, so this is how we will be creating validations. Okay, so your register schema is nothing but, okay, so it is a structure of your registration flow, that the data that is going to come from the UI. Okay, so it's going to be an object that has a property called name, and it should be a string. Okay, and it should be minimum 4 characters, and it is required. Okay, same way, let's move on to the email. So email joy is going to be a string again, and we can have like minimum 6 characters, and it's going to be required, and it should be email format. Okay, you can mention in this way also. Okay, same way for password. So it's going to be password here. I'm going to send it as a password here, right? So joy string, and minimum you can mention like minimum it should be 4 characters or 5 characters, and it's going to be required. Okay, simple as that. We just mentioned our structure. Okay, so our structure is ready. Okay, so this part input validation that we have written here, right? So this is the schema, and using this schema you can validate. See, okay, so in my registration flow here, okay, here is const. Okay, const, you can have something called validation. Okay, so see the format that you need to mention here. Okay, joy registration schema. Okay, so there will be something called validate. Okay, see, so that particular schema, okay, dot validate. Okay, and whatever the input that you want to mention, for example, in our case we will be getting the data here. Okay, so data. Okay, simple as that. So what I'll do is I'll just console my validation here. I'll just comment this out. So see now, so whenever I call my registration, okay, so I don't need this anymore. I'm calling my auth service dot register, okay, and sending the request body. Okay, and in my request body I will be getting here data. Okay, so now I'm going to validate, okay, whether this particular data is is a valid data. Okay, the name, email ID, and password and other things. Okay, see, I'm going to send it. See the things here, the value, the error. Okay, so okay, I can send some more things for you. So return validation. I'll show you in the UI here. Okay, so that you can understand very easily. So see here, I'm going to send SD and other things here. Okay, see what it gives you. It gives you two objects, I mean two properties, value and error. Okay, so value is nothing but, so this is given by your schema, which is joy. Okay, so this validation object is returned. Okay, so this is why this is the response that I sent to the API. Okay, so see, it gives you two things. One is value. Value is nothing but which you typed in here. Okay, this value will be getting it here. Okay, and the second thing is an error. Okay, so see, it will give you very clearly. Okay, so here inside your error there is something called details. Okay, see, name must be at least 4 characters long. Okay, it will give you directly an error. Same way, if I type in like 6 characters. Okay, so now there is no error at all. Okay, so next, email. Okay, so if I send this, see, it is going to say me email must be a valid email. Okay, so now I'm going to change this like .com. Okay, so now see, there is no error at all. Okay, because it satisfied all the properties. Okay, suppose if I don't send name, send it, see, name is a required. Okay, so it will have an error object. Inside that we'll have something called details. If all the data is correct, okay, so there will be no error at all. Okay, so that is how your joy will do every validations for us. Okay, so we need not confuse ourselves. Okay, everything is done by your joy object directly. Okay, so that's how your registration flow works. Okay, so now I told you, right, so there will be two things. One is error. Okay, I can have only error here. Okay, so I have the data here, I don't need the values part again. Okay, so I just need error. Okay, so you can directly mention like if there is an error. Okay, if there is an error, okay, for example, I'll make an error here. So send it. Okay, so I'll have my error here. Okay, see, so it has two objects, one is error. Okay, so I'm going to do a destructuring. So inside that I will be having my error object. Okay, so now so what I'll do is, instead of having result.send here, I'll send my request everything here itself directly. Okay, it's also here. Okay, you can send it in this dot register. Okay, so whenever I call my post method, okay, with register, it is going to call my auth service dot register here. I'm passing my request body and the response. Okay, so I'll be getting the response here. So first the data and I'll be getting the response object here. Okay, so if there is an error happens, what you need to do? So you need to send, okay, result dot. So I'll be getting that object here, right? You can send the data directly. Okay, so for example, so what is the message that you are going to follow? You can just mention like error, okay, and pass that particular object. Okay, so inside error I have details, right? So error dot details, and it's going to be an array. Okay, so details of 0. So first element. So there will be only one element inside that particular array. Okay, so basically that is the thing, and that particular message. So dot message. Okay, so simple. See here now, what I have done here, I just call my auth services dot register. Okay, you can do this in this way. Okay, or you can directly call auth services dot register directly. Okay, so I'm just calling it and sending my request body and response. Okay, so this is the response. I'm going to use it to in order to return the response there itself. Okay, so I'll be getting that response object here. So I'm checking my schema dot validate. Okay, so it returns two objects. One is value. So one is value and one is error. Okay, so I'm going to just destructure my error around. Okay, if there is an error happens, dot send. And what is the error that is having here? So error dot details. So dot details, and inside it is going to be an array. So I'm just taking the first object alone and that particular message. Okay, so see now. So let's see what happens. Go here. Okay, So I'm going to send this. See, I'm getting my error object that my name must be at least 4 characters length. Okay, you can directly mention the message in the message. Okay, so same way we can mention anything, like if I mention something like this, and you can mention like this. Okay, it is going to give you email must be a valid email must be a valid email. Okay, suppose if we don't mention this, so email is required. Okay, same if a password, if you mention like only 3 characters, it is going to be okay. First it should be a proper format, it comes from one after another. Okay, so password length must be 5 characters length. Okay, so our joy object. Okay, so joy will do all the input validation. You just need to define your schema or the structure of your data that is going to come. Okay, so whenever you register, whenever the registration process is done, you can directly validate them and pass the data that you want to validate. It will give you error object. If there is an error, okay, just send out the details. Okay, clear? So clear about the joy object and the input validation. Can everyone confirm? Alrighty. So now the first part is done. Okay, so next thing is we need to check the first validation is done. Okay, if there is no error, okay, it will go to the next topic. Okay, so next thing is whether we need to check whether already the user exists or not. Okay, so basically we are going to make a query to our database whether this email already exists or not. Okay, simple as that. Okay, so I'm going to have one more function here. Okay, something like find by email. Okay, and I'm passing my email here and a function, normal function here. Okay, and return Mongo. I will just copy this. So return mongodb.collection.users dot find one. Okay, and what is the where condition that we need to mention? Our email ID, which is matching to this. Okay, so see here, I have my email here. Okay, so it returns whether whatever the email that I send it. Okay, it will give me that particular data based on the email. Okay, so let's see here. So I'll have it as async. So const. Okay, so const and user await this dot find by email. Okay, and I'm going to pass the email ID. Where is the email ID? It's going to be here in your data, right? So data dot email. Okay, and just console it. Console.log of user. Okay, so go here. So already I have an if there is a new, if I have a existing email, what is the email that I have here? test@gooey.com. Okay, so if I try to register with the same email ID, so test@gooey.com. Okay, so I'm going to I just queried my database here, right here. Okay, so send it, and I need to pass the parameters. So go to the console. See, I am getting the user who has registered with that particular email ID. Okay, so that is the thing. So now what you need to do here? So here, if the user already exists, okay, so if the user already exists, okay, what you need to do? You need to send out an error message, something like user already registered. Simple as that. Okay, so we need to return first here. Okay, same way return here. So what you have done here, if the user already exists, I'm going to send out a message, something like user already registered. Okay, so now go here. I'm going to use the same email ID, which I have it here. Okay, if I do this, you'll throw me an user already registered. Okay, suppose if I do a different thing, okay, if I do a different email ID, it is not going to affect automatically the next test. It will be inserted into the database. Okay, so input validation done. email validation, done. Okay, email is nothing but the user validation. Okay, so what is the next step? So, okay, clear on this? Clear on this in this part? Already. So now the next part. Okay, so input validation is done. First is done. Email exists or not, that is done. Now the crucial part is we're going to encrypt our password. Okay, so in order to encrypt our password, I told you that we are going to make use of a package called bcrypt. Okay, so I will have it as small here. So bcrypt. Okay, so bcrypt, go here. I have the package here, and I need to mention. So I mentioned you joy right here. Okay, if you want to check the documentation here, you can use this documentation. Here there are multiple things like email ID. You can even mention like alpha numeral, something like you can mention some regular expression and much more things. Okay, you can mention many things here. There are multiple things here, but I am just covering an example with string. I'm just covering like with minimum, and you can mention multiple things here in your joy. Okay, so I'll share you those documentation if you need. Okay, so here the next part is bcrypt. Okay, so bcrypt, I told you right, it's going to be something like encrypting your password. Okay, so a library to help you hash your passwords. Okay, so hash passwords. So let's see. So I'm going to install that particular package, npm install bcrypt. Done. Okay, so now here the next part is I'm going to encrypt my password. So I'm going to require that particular package here. Okay, so let's see. So how your hashing methodology works? Okay, so this is something related to a different subject. So in computer science, if you have read computer science, there is something called cryptography. So it's a different subject. Okay, so I'll quickly say how to encrypt passwords. Okay, so first is there is something called a salt. Okay, we call it as a salt. Okay, so salt is nothing but you have your own password. For example, I'm sending something like 12345. Okay, so using that particular password, you need to encrypt them, right? So whenever you want to encrypt them, there should be something called a key. Using that particular key only, it will be encrypted. Okay, so based on certain keys or any other random string and other things. Okay, using that only, we will be basically encrypting our password. Okay, same. So we call them as something called salt, or we'll call it as a string, and multiple things here. Okay, so we need not go in depth with that. Okay, so first thing is, first you need to generate salt. Okay, so salt is nothing but here bcrypt dot generate salt. Okay, so you can mention any number of any number here. Okay, it can be like 10 or it can be 2 or whatever. See, so it can be any numbers. Okay, so I can, if you want to mention 5, it will be 5. Okay, so in order to explain this, what happens here is it will generate you a string. Okay, for example, random string, for example, something like this. Okay, so then it will encrypt this string into another string. Okay, so something like this. Okay, same way it will take the same string. Okay, and take and modify it to another string. Okay, something like this. Okay, same way it is going to do the same thing, encrypt that particular thing, like something like this. Okay, how many times it is going to take a string. Okay, and encrypting that particular string again and again and again. Okay, so how many times that you mention here? Okay, for example, if you mention 5, it is going to encrypt like first this is a string, then it will encrypt into another format, then it is going to encrypt in different format and generate in another format, and then fifth time it will give you a string here. Okay, so something like this. So that is the one that you are mentioning here. Suppose if you mention 10, it is going to generate for 10 times. Okay, so let's see. I'll just print my salt here. Okay, see that string. It will be like not a human readable. Okay, so see, so go here and send. Okay, user already exists. So something like test1. So I'm going to console here. Okay. Oh, sorry, I need to use await. So I'm sending it here. See, a random string, okay, which is generated using 10 times encrypted string. Okay, so you don't need to go in depth with that. Okay, so it is going to be a random string. Okay, using this string only, you are going to encrypt your password. Okay, so that is the basic understanding. Okay, so salt is nothing but a random string. Using that random string only, a random, you can say it as a salt or whatever. Okay, using that only, you are going to encrypt your password. Okay, so this is your salt now. Okay, so let's see how to encrypt our password now. Okay, so our new password is, so we'll have something called new pass here. Okay, so await again bcrypt. Okay, dot hash. Okay, so using this, okay, it takes two parameters. One is the password the user entered. Okay, so data, so here it will be here, right? Data dot password. Okay, and the salt that you created here, salt. Okay, that's it. Okay, so if I print my new password, so this is the password that will be stored inside your database, not your original password. Okay, see here, I send this. Okay, so this is your hash that you created. Okay, and see, this is your password that will be stored in the database. Okay, so it is not human readable, it will be random thing. Okay, so this is how a basic bcrypt works. Okay, so now we'll be storing this password into our database. Okay, so what I'll do is I can directly modify uh, data.password here. Okay, simple as that. Okay, then just generated my salt. Okay, and using that I generated a password, like using the, I have that password inside my data, right? And I'm assigning that to directly into the data itself, data.password. Okay, so if I print it, so console.log of data, and go here, register yourself. See here, you sent a different password like 112 something like this. It is encrypted into a different format now. Okay, so this is how it will be stored inside your database, and this is the you need to follow this. Okay, you should never store your plain passwords inside your database. Okay, so done. So once it is done, you can directly insert into the database. Okay, so const, you can directly have await here. It's always preferable to use try. Okay, so try, because you are using multiple logics inside it, right? So you can use try, and if there is an error happens, just console your error. So console.error here, and send a response, something like error, something like internal server error. So whenever there's an error happens, we are just sending a message like internal server error. Okay, so once the user is inserted, okay, so we can just mention our message, send a message, that message something like registered successfully. So after these steps only, you need to insert your data inside the database. Okay, so see, all the things are done. Input validation done using something called schema, which is joy. Here you have mentioned a schema and validated, and if you see here, if there's an error, okay, so we sending that this is an error, okay, on that particular message. Okay, same way, if the user already exists, we will be sending a message like user already registered. And once this part is done, okay, we are going to encrypt our password. Okay, so how to encrypt our password? You need to use a package called bcrypt. First, you need to generate a random string like bcrypt.generate salt. Okay, and you can mention here 10 and whatever the number that you want. Okay, and then using this salt only, you're going to encrypt our password. How to do that? So bcrypt.hash and whatever the password that is coming from the user and your salt. If you do this, it will give you the password. I'm just updating in the data.password itself, okay, because I'm going to insert the data, right? So I just console it and showed you here. So something like this. Okay. So now go here and register successfully. Once the user is inserted, okay. So if there is an error happening in during insertion, okay, it will throw you an internal server error. Okay. So everything is done. Paka. Okay. So go here and I'm going to register a user called test1. Okay. And test1.groovy and something like test1 dollar. Okay. So send this registered successfully. Go to the database, run this. See, test1, that particular email ID and the password, some random strings. Okay. So I'll remove this. This is not a proper format. Okay. So this is how we need to store our passwords. Okay. If I want to show you, I will show in this way also, or the tree structure. This is the one preferable. Okay. Yes. Okay. So now if you want to do some validation, for example, if you register with the same user, okay, it is going to throw you user already registered. Okay. So simple error. Okay. Same way here, if you don't send name, okay, it is going to throw you a validation. Name is required. Okay. Same if you don't send email ID, it is going to throw you an error. The email is required. Same if you don't send password, it is going to throw you an error. Okay. So here. So password is required. Okay. So if you send like only two characters, it is going to throw you an error. Name must be 4 characters length. Okay. So if it is not a proper format, okay, it is going to be a throw in error. Email must be an valid email. If everything satisfied, like test and a new email ID, and I will have like test here, pasted successfully. Go here and see it will be inserted. Okay. Clear on this. So can you explain line number 31? Line number, this one. Yeah, that's what I have a password already here. Okay, data.password, the old password. So which I send here, right? Okay, I have to encrypt them and store it. Anyways, I need to store it in the data only. Okay, so this because I'm going to insert that particular data here. Okay, instead of having a different variable. So basically, this is the one, new pass, and then you need to assign data.password to your new pass, and then you are going to insert the data. Okay. Instead of doing that, I'm just modifying directly in the data.password itself. Okay. So insert user, send response, success response. Okay. So now our registration part is done. Okay. And I need to mention one thing. Okay. So suppose if there's an error happens, for example, this is not a proper format. Okay. So it is showing you an error. Okay. But you need to change your status code as well. See, it's still 200. Okay. So 200 is nothing but something like successful response, right? So we need to mention like there are multiple things. Okay. We'll see here. So you can use something called status. Okay. So and send a status here. For example, an error happens, we will basically use 400. So 400 is nothing but bad request. Okay. So if you go here, go to 400 HTTP status code. So it's nothing but a bad request. So bad request is nothing but your API expects a different input. Okay. So expects the correct input, but you are sending a different input. Okay. So if you do this, it is throwing you 400 bad requests and the same response. Okay. Same it is going to apply here as well. Okay. So you can mention 400 here. Sorry, status. So always prefer to use status as well. Okay. So it's needed in some point of time. Okay. So by default, it's going to be 200. Okay. So successful response will have these things. Same way here, whenever there is an error happening. Okay. Internal server error. So what you need to have? You need to have something called 500. So 500 is nothing but internal server error. So if you go here and check 500 status code. It's going to be something like error. Okay, so whenever there is an error happens, we will say it as a 500 response. Okay, so go here. Okay, and if you now everything is paka. See here now. So 400. Whenever there is not a proper email ID or not a proper valid input, okay, it's going to be a 400. If there is an already user exist, 400. And if there's anything, everything is correct, we are going to just like send a success message and with 200 response. And if there's an error happens during these stages, so we can send internal server error. Okay. Yes. Collectively, do you guys have any questions on the registration part? Can everyone confirm? Alrighty. So the next thing is the next part of your authentication is it's going to be your login. Okay. So now you are going to answer me. Okay. So what are all the steps needed for login? So obviously you will be checking for input, whether they need to send the email and password. Okay. So then so why do we need to encrypt? It's a login part, right? Okay, we'll go by one first. We need to check whether the input is valid or not. Okay, so then we need to check in email exists or not. Okay, so if the user does not exist in the database itself, okay, then how can he log in? Okay, so we need to mention an error, right? The error is nothing but user does not exist. Okay, and you are trying to log in and those message. Okay, so then it's going to be comparing your password. Okay, not the encrypting your password. So comparing your password, whether the password is correct or not. Okay, so whether the user entered password is exactly similar to the password when he used to register. Okay, so that is understanding. And then no, this step is not needed at all. Okay, so let's see. So in your login part, okay, so in my auth.route.js, I'm going to use the same thing here and use the login here. Okay, so here in my auth services, the first step is I'm going to create a schema for my login. Okay, so this is going to be your login schema. So what is the input? Basically only the email and password. Okay, so other than that we don't need to change anything. Okay, so I'm going to copy the same here, the input validation here, and here I'm going to use login schema instead of register schema. Okay, simple as that. So input validation exactly similar to what we had already. Okay, so then what we need to check? We need to check whether the user, the email ID exists or not. Okay, so now go here, find the user by the email ID. Okay, so email here. Okay, so what is the next step? Here we need to check whether the particular user exists or not. Okay, so if the user exists in the registration flow, what we need to do? If the user already registered, if the user already exists in the registration process, we'll be throwing them like user already registered. But in the case of login, if the user does not exist, okay, so if the user does not exist, we are going to send them an error that user is not registered. Okay, so and we can say like something like 401, okay, which is unauthorized access. So 401, yes, unauthorized client. Okay, so he's not an authorized client. Okay, or you can use access denied like 403. Okay, so 403 forbidden error, 403 error. Okay, forbidden. Okay, so we can use 403 here. Okay, so that user is not in our database itself. How can he log into our system? Okay, so that is the validation here. Okay, so it's going to be user validation. So checking whether that particular user exists in our database. Okay, if the user does not exist in our database, we are going to send a message with 403 user is not registered, okay, or user does not exist, okay. So that is the thing here. So user is not registered, okay. The second thing. So here it's going to be user validation, okay. So until this point of time, is it clear? Alrighty. So now the next thing is we need to check our password or compare our password. Okay. So comparing our password, whether the password the user entered and the password which he used in the registration process is same or not. Okay. So that is the understanding here. Okay. So how can we do that? Okay. So checking the password. Okay. See here. I can have something called const. Okay. So again, we can have validate. Okay. Or validation. Or I can have like is valid. Okay. See, Bcrypt, okay, there's a function called compare. Okay, so there is a function called compare. Okay, so what is the purpose of this compare is it takes two things. One is the password that the user just now entered. Okay, so for example, data dot password, which the user currently entered. Okay, and the second password is he used in the registration flow, right? So that password. Okay, so user, so which is I have my user data already, right? So which is in my database. Okay, so user dot password. Okay, comparing the password that he used in the login, okay, and the password that is in my database. Okay, so it should be same, right? Then only the user is a valid user. Okay, so it gives you true or false. Okay, simple as that. Okay, so go here. If the password is valid, okay, or you can mention like okay, we'll have it. So if the password is valid, okay, or if the password is not valid, okay, you need to send. So this is the message. Okay, so we can say something like again here, password is incorrect. Okay, something like this. Okay, you can mention in this message something like this. So password does not match, or you can mention like password is incorrect, whatever the thing. Okay, password doesn't match. Okay, so if it is not a valid password, okay, return 403 and password doesn't match. Okay, if everything is okay, result dot send message successfully logged in. Okay, simple. So first thing is we are checking the input validation. Okay, so that is the first thing using joy. Okay, so then we are going to check whether that particular user exists in our database or not. Okay, so I'm going to query my database, and if the user does not exist, I'm going to send a message that user is not registered. Okay, user does not exist or whatever that you can have. Okay, then if the user is valid, then we are going to check our password whether password is correct or not. So bcrypt dot compare. Here we just used bcrypt dot hash to generate a password. To generate a salt, we use bcrypt dot generate salt. And if you want to compare those passwords, you need to use something called compare. And the password that the user just now used for logged in here, suppose if I'm trying to log in, I'm going to use that particular password and compare the password that he is using whenever he registered. Okay, so this is going to be from the user object, which is I just queried my database, right? So that particular password. Okay, so let's go ahead and see here. Okay, so I don't need my name. Okay, and it's a different email ID is invalid. Okay, so what happens here? Okay, I need to use async. So go here and send it. Name is what is the schema that we, oh, I'm in register flow, so it's going to be login. Okay, see, so it will throw me email is. So what else I'm missing? Am I missing anything? So I don't need a sync here. So auth services dot login, and it will come to the login here. And I'm checking the login schema dot validation. And what did I miss here? So result is not defined. Sorry, here I missed to have result. Okay, so see now I'm going to send it. So email must be a valid email. Okay, so I'm going to use test. Okay, and I'm going to remove my password. So it is going to meet. It is going to throw. Sorry, here it is going to throw the password is required. Okay, suppose if I use a wrong password or a different email ID. Okay, so test2. We didn't register with you test2 at all, right? Send it. So user is not registered. Okay, suppose if I send a proper user test. Okay, and send a wrong password, something like this. Okay, so password does not match. Okay, if everything is correct. Okay, so this is the correct password. So send it, successfully logged in. Okay, so this is how your login flow works. Okay, clear? Clear on this? Can everyone confirm? Okay, so one another thing is, okay, actual flow is this. Okay, so this is how we will be building building our backend register and login flow. Okay, one other thing is here when you log into the system. Okay, so whether the user is not exist or not, and you are mentioning password does not match. Okay, we should never mention this message. Okay, we should never have a real-time message. Okay, so usually it should be something like user or password is incorrect. Okay, we should always we should always display this message to the user. Okay, same way here as well. Okay, even though it is like user does not exist, or even though the password does not match here, you should always say user or password is incorrect, or user or password is incorrect. Okay, so reason behind that is it's for security purpose. Okay, for example, any other user can type in a password. Okay, so for example, I'm not, there is no user. For example, here I have two users like test1 and test and Kubi. Okay, so if some random hacker comes to the system and check like test2 at guvi.com is exist or not in the database. Okay, so how can he check basically? So he goes to the login page and type in the email ID, and we are directly showing that user does not exist. Okay, so you should never reveal the real-time information. Okay, you should always say user or password is incorrect. Okay, so you should never say your real-time messages to the user. Okay, because for the security purpose. Okay, so what happens here? He can try out any email IDs and he can get the data. Okay, so this particular email ID is not registered with this website. Okay, so those details you should never reveal them. Okay, so whatever the error here. Okay, so basically these two errors. Okay, you should always mention user or password is incorrect. Okay, so that is the thing here. Okay, and this message can be seen. This doesn't look great here. Okay, this is good. Okay, you need not change anything here, but whenever there is a login flow there, okay, you should always use this message. Okay, not this message. Basically it should be this format. Okay, so you should never say that user is not here and the password is incorrect. You should never mention that. Okay, whatever the error message with respect to email or with respect to password, it should be always user or password is incorrect or user or password mismatch and whatever the thing here. Okay, it can be like username or email or password. So any websites you go, so they will have this message alone. Even if you mention a wrong username or correct username, they will mention this message only. Okay, so that is to overcome the security things. Okay, clear? Alrighty. So you can have it in this way, okay, or you can have all your schemas. So basically there will be multiple schemas in your application. So for example, this is going to be used in your registration flow and some other thing for your login flow. Okay, same way you can use them in your post here. Okay, we just directly called our API, right? So basically here you need to add those validation. Okay, so like post, whenever you create a new post, what is the data that you need? Like user ID, title, body. Okay, so you should create a schema like post schema and you need to validate here in this place, and then only will be inserting the database. Okay, so basically it's a common validation. It's not like for only registration or login. Okay, joy is to provide validation to your inputs that are coming from the client side or from the API request. Okay, so please consider using joy in all part of your request body. Okay, so whenever there is a validation, you should directly use joy. Okay, so there are multiple packages. So joy is the famous one, so a popular package, so we usually use joy here. Okay, so basically how it will be is we'll be having a folder called schema and have everything inside that schema, like register schema or login schema, everything inside it. Or we will have one file, something called schema.js, something like this. Okay, and have all our schemas inside it, something like this. So export const, same way we'll be moving this. So export const, same way we'll be having. So joy package will be used only in the schema. Okay, at in later point of them. So if you write your schema in each and every file, okay, what happens? You should import your joy package in each and every file. Okay, so if you do this, okay, joy will be only inside this particular schema.js. Okay, so whenever you need to change in this file only. Okay, so go here and import it from, so const require, it's not export, module.export. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll have it in here, const. Okay, and here module dot exports and have those things, register schema, login schema. Okay, simple as that. So go here and shared slash schema. Okay, and you can have like schema here. So and call schema, and you can have any name. You can have, I can have register now. Okay, so I don't need a schema here, right? Because this is going to be a schema file. Okay, so schema dot register dot validate, same way schema dot login dot validate. Okay, and same name here as well, register login. Okay, yeah. So this is how in the real time we will be having. Okay, so schema in different file, Mongo in different file. So if you go to, if there is a changes in your Mongo, okay, you can directly go to the mongo.js and change those things. Okay, so because MongoDB will this package will be used only in this particular file. Okay, same way for your schemas. Okay, so you can have one file for all the schemas. You can mention all the schemas and have them exported. So joy will be only used in this particular file. Okay, so whenever there's a change you want to do, you can directly come to this file and just modify the schemas here. Okay, you need not touch base your each and every services. Okay, yes. What else? Yes. Any other questions do you guys have for me? So this is all about your authentication. Okay, so whatever the node application you go, okay, so this will be the thing. Okay? There is nothing new implementation in any other companies. Okay, so this is very common. So we usually follow the same standards in all the. So basically input validation. So understanding is this. Okay, so there should be an input validation. There should be an email exist or not, into the password. Here you use a joy. Okay, in some companies they may use a different package. Same way we here use Bcrypt. Okay, same way some companies may use a different package. Okay, So that is the only thing will be changing. Okay, but the logics the same. Okay, so it is not going to change at any point of time in your in whatever the company you go. Okay, so this will be for sure there will be an interview question. Okay, so they will ask like how will you implement authentication in your Node.js. Okay, so they will ask this. Okay, so basically you need to just put in some keywords like I will be using joy in order to validate the input, and I will be, for example, if it is a register flow, I will check whether that particular user already exists or not. And we should never. This is the bonus point. We should never store our passwords in plain in our database. Basically, we should encrypt our password and store it in the database. So then they will ask, so what is the reason? So why you do or why do you want to store the passwords encrypted? Then you can explain them, right? As a developer or as a database admin, okay, even the company person should never know the password of the user. Okay, so we should basically store them in an encrypted password, okay, or encrypted hash. Okay, so we call it as hash. Okay, so in order so that any user cannot like directly access the password. Okay, so it will be randomly generated. Okay, so you can mention them. Then once these things are successful, then only I'll be allowing them to register into our database. Okay, so then same way for the login. Okay, so you can directly mention like I can use bcrypt package, I can use hashing, I will be generating a salt, and these keywords if you put in the interview, it will be really great. Okay, so I will add the try here. So here as well. And yes, so what we do is tomorrow we will see what is the purpose of authorization. Okay, so there are the main piece here, authentication and authorization. So authentication part is done. Okay, so collectively, do you guys have any questions on this implementation? Can everyone confirm? So we have encrypted password for registering, and while in login, how it is comparing. Yeah, that is the specialty of bcrypt package. Okay, so bcrypt package gives us a thing called compare. So it knows it has some implementation inside it. Okay, so you just need to mention two passwords. It will clearly understand that these passwords are same. Yes, so here we just used something like this, right? Okay, so request and response, and then a call. It is a callback function, and then we are going to just returning auth services dot register. Okay, so if there is something like one line, okay, so what you can do here is you can directly call something like this. You don't need to mention something like this. You don't need to mention request body or response. Okay, you can directly mention in this way. Okay, so automatically request and response will be automatically available for you here. Okay, so using the request, you can take your data. So you can mention in this way. Okay, see, if there is only one line and you just need your request and response things. Okay, you can mention just like your definition here. It will automatically called. Okay, so go here, see how your routes gets reduced. So in the real time in the companies, so our routes will be something like this. Okay, just like one line. That's how your routes will be looking like. Okay, so this is how exactly it will look. Okay, and see, and whenever we call the particular function, your request and response will be directly available here. Same way for your request here as well. Okay, so request. Okay, so you need your data, right? So we use data in multiple places. Okay, so what we can do is here is we can store our request body in the data. So request dot body. Okay, simple. We want to store them and same here as well. Okay, so request dot body. Okay, simple as that. Yes. So now it will work as same. Okay, so if I do register, it is going to throw me Okay, find by email is not a function. First, it should be assigned. It should be here. So go here, send it. So where did I use it? Okay, here. Okay, so here it is, and data dot email. Okay, so what is the it is showing? So find by email. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. So because you used in this way, right? So your this will be overwritten, and that's why we cannot use this here. Okay. So you can directly mention service. So the name. Okay. So service dot register, service dot login, and service dot find by email. Okay. Yes, and this can be in online as well. Okay, this is just like one line. Okay. Other than that, everything is same. So see it in this way. Okay, so always follow this way. Okay, so if there is no multiple lines, okay, you can directly mention auth services dot register and auth services dot login. Okay, and automatically it will be calling the different things here. Okay, yes, so I have many questions in the message. So how is protected route in React route used along with the node authentication? Are they totally different? Which, how are they used in real-time apps? What are all the technologies set to be covered? And yes. So how do you use this authentication in the front end? Okay. So in the React, what you need to mention, okay. So you will be having a login page basically. So in your login page, you will be having two form fields. Like sorry, if I take a registered page, what will happen? You'll have name, it will have email ID and password. So you basically always you will have some validation in the front end as well. Okay, the same. Okay, so once the user clicks the login button, you just need to send your details to this API. Okay, so once this is done, okay, so basically we will not be sending out this message. Okay, so here it clearly we will not be sending this message. Okay, that is a concept called token. Okay, I will be showing it tomorrow. That comes under authorization. Okay, there are multiple steps after this. Okay, so that's why I didn't remove this message. So there are one more thing that is going to happen, sorry, in the login section here. Okay, so I'll show you. So tomorrow I'll show you how to generate authentication, I mean generate token. Once the user gets logged in, we are not going to send out this message. We'll be sending them the token, and using that token only you will be sending accessing all the APIs. Now I come to your question in your protected route. So in your routes, what you need to do is you will check, you will have some if conditions in your routes. Okay, so whether there is a token. So whenever I log into the system here, okay, so whenever I log into the system, what I will give you a token. Okay, so you need to basically store that token in your local storage or whatever the storage that you want to prefer, that you prefer basically. Okay, so a normal thing. So you will be using local. You already read what is the local storage. Okay, so once the logging is done, what you need to do? You will be storing. I will be sending at the token as a response to my front end, and you need to store that token in some storage purpose, like it can be in your local storage or session storage. Okay, so whenever you make an API call, you need to send that particular token along with that API request. Okay, for example, if I call my post here, okay, so something like post here. Okay, so you need to send that particular data. Okay, so you need to send the data here in your authorizations. Okay, so I will show you tomorrow. Okay, so wait, first thing is you just need to log into the system. Okay, so log in. So once I logged in, okay, so once I logged in, I will not just send this message. Along with this, I will be sending you a token. Okay, So using that token, from now on, whatever the API call that you do, okay, you need to send that particular token in the request, okay, and I will be validating that particular token in the authorization. Next tomorrow I will be showing that, okay. So that's how you will be doing, okay. And in the case of React, okay, what you need to do is you need to store that particular token in the local storage. And if the storage exists, is having a token, then you need to allow the user to enter into your page, okay. If the token is invalid, or if the token does not exist, you will be redirecting to the login page itself, okay. So that is the understanding in the case of front end, and the back end is simple. That's what I told you just now, okay. I will show you the authorization part tomorrow, okay. Yes, for all the technologies yet to be covered, and not sure about that, but in the case of development, like web development, so tomorrow is your last class. Tomorrow is the last class for your Node.js. So after that, maybe like they'll take AWS and much more stuffs which is in your syllabus. I'm not sure, but tomorrow is the last class that I will be coming. Yeah. Already. Okay. So that's it for today, and I will share you these things. I have the Joy documentation here. You can use multiple validation if you need, and I have everything here. Okay, it will be helpful for you. Yes, here it is. And I need to share you the files, right? Node. Okay, I'll share you everything. So, okay, I need to change the name here. Auth.service.js, post.service.js. I'll have it as post clone. So auth.route.js, post.routes.js, auth.service.js, post.route.js. Okay, enough. So in your index.js, so it's going to be post, and here it's going to be yes. Auth.routes.js, post.routes.js, auth.service.js, and post.service.js. So in your post.service, here it's going to be posted. Okay, yeah. Okay, I'll share you these files. Packet.json, routes, services, shared, index.js. So it's going to be node auth. Yeah, I have shared all the files. So whatever that we covered in the Node.js, I have sent. So I don't need this anymore. Alrighty, so feedback link is here, and
Hi, sir. Hello.